The auditorium was quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Rows of elderly faces turned toward the small stage where a frail man with silver hair and a gentle smile adjusted his microphone. His name was Professor Harold Bennett, retired literature teacher, age 84, and he had been invited to speak at the community center's Wisdom of the Ages seminar. For years, Harold had taught university students how to analyze poetry and understand the deeper meanings of life hidden between the lines. Now, his students were gone, his lecture halls silent, but his words still carried the same warmth. The audience waited. He began slowly, his voice soft yet firm. When I was young, he said, I thought wisdom came from books. I thought experience was something you could measure by age or degrees. But I was wrong. Real wisdom comes from learning how to lose and still remain kind. A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harold smiled faintly. You see, aging is not about counting the years. It's about learning what really matters after everything else fades. I've seen friends chase money, status, attention, and lose themselves. When you reach this stage of life, you realize none of that ever loved you back. He paused and looked around the room, letting the words breathe. So here's my first piece of advice, he said. Stop apologizing for growing old. Every wrinkle is proof that you tried, you cared, you survived. Youth chases perfection, but age knows that imperfection is what makes life beautiful. In the front row, an elderly woman dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Harold noticed but continued. My second advice, forgive, even when it feels impossible. Not for them, but for yourself. I once had a colleague who betrayed my trust. I carried that bitterness for 30 years. It became a companion I didn't want but couldn't leave. The day I finally forgave him, I slept deeply for the first time in decades. Don't let old anger steal your remaining peace. He coughed softly and took a sip of water. And third, never stop learning. You don't need a classroom. You can learn from your grandchildren, from the wind in the trees, from the silence between moments. The day you stop being curious, you start fading away. The audience was listening so closely that even the sound of a chair shifting felt loud. Harold adjusted his glasses and smiled again. Many of you ask me, Professor, aren't you lonely now that you live alone? The truth is, I used to be. But then I discovered something wonderful. Solitude is not loneliness. It's a place where you can meet yourself again. Learn to enjoy your own company. Talk to yourself kindly. You are still the same person who dreamed at 20, loved at 40, and struggled at 60. You're just wiser now. A quiet chuckle spread through the room. Harold's tone grew softer, as if he were speaking to each person individually. You must also remember to laugh. Laugh at your aching knees, your forgetfulness, your glasses you can never find. Life becomes lighter when you stop trying to make it perfect. A day with laughter is a day well lived. He closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the past. When my wife passed away, he said gently, I thought my life had ended too. For months, I lived in silence. Then one morning, I heard a bird singing outside the window, the same song she loved. That sound reminded me that love doesn't die, it just changes form. So my fourth advice is this: speak to those who are gone. Light a candle, look at their photo, say what you didn't get to say. Love continues, even if they are no longer here. The room was now filled with sniffles. Some wiped their eyes openly. Others stared at the floor, lost in memories. Harold's voice did not tremble. It grew stronger. My fifth and final advice is the most important one. Be grateful. Gratitude turns an ordinary day into a blessing. When you wake up and can still see the morning light, still taste your tea, still remember your name, that's grace. Every day you live is a small miracle. He stepped back from the microphone, then leaned forward once more. Please, don't waste time thinking your life is over. As long as you breathe, you have something to give, a smile, a story, a kindness. The world still needs your light. The audience stood and applauded softly, some with tears, some with trembling smiles. Harold bowed slightly, then took his seat at the edge of the stage. A woman approached him afterward, her hands shaking as she said, "Professor, you reminded me that my life still has meaning." He patted her hand gently. "It always did," he said. "Sometimes we just need someone to remind us." As the lights dimmed and the seniors slowly left the hall, Harold sat for a moment longer, watching them go. Shoulders lighter, steps steadier. He smiled to himself. For a teacher, there was no greater reward than seeing hearts awakened once more. And in that quiet room, the old professor realized that he had just given his most important lecture, not about literature, but about life.